What if everything you were taught about ancient history was completely wrong? Long before Columbus ever set sail, there was a city in America larger than Paris, where people bathed daily, grew food on floating lakes, and built pyramids bigger than Giza. But in a single century, millions of people vanished. Their library of thousands of years of written history was burned to ash, and the jungle swallowed it whole. Today, we are uncovering the true, untold history of the Americas before 1492. We're uncovering the untold chapters of history every single week. If you learned something new today, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below which ancient civilization surprised you the most. Share this video with a history lover, and I'll see you in the next one. The frozen highway to a new world. Long before skyscrapers reached into the clouds, long before paved highways carved through valleys, and long before a single European ship ever glided across the horizon, North and South America were home to thriving, complex, and vastly diverse human civilizations. To understand how this dynamic history began, we must turn back the clock thousands of years into the icy depths of the Ice Age. Between 9 and 15,000 years ago, colossal glaciers held much of the planet's water hostage in deep ice sheets. Because sea levels dropped so dramatically, a massive stretch of dry land emerged between modern-day Asia and Alaska. Known to historians as Beringia, this land bridge served as a natural gateway between two giant continents. Small, resilient groups of Asian hunter-gatherers followed animal herds across this frozen landscape, tracking mammoths, bison, and game in a desperate search for food. Step by step, generation by generation, these nomadic bands moved deeper into the pristine, untouched continent. When global temperatures eventually warmed, the giant glaciers melted, unleashing millions of gallons of water back into the oceans. The sea rose quickly, engulfing Beringia forever and forming the turbulent Bering Strait. The descendants of those brave early wanderers were cut off from the rest of the globe, but they did not stop moving. Pushing southward along coastline paths and mountain valleys, they spread across the vast expanses of North, Central, and South America, adapting to every climate zone imaginable from freezing subarctic tundras to sun-drenched coastal swamps and dense, humid jungles. The seed of civilization. For thousands of years, these early populations lived as nomads, moving constantly to hunt wild game, gather wild berries, and track seasonal resources. But around 10,000 years ago, a massive shift occurred across the globe. Humans discovered the art of agriculture. Early Americans began carefully selecting seeds, breeding wild vegetation, and domesticating plants like corn, beans, and squash. This agricultural revolution changed everything. Rather than spending every waking hour hunting for meat or searching for wild roots, communities suddenly had a reliable, predictable supply of nutrient-rich food. With full stomachs came rapidly growing populations, and with stable food surpluses came the ability to settle down in one place. People built permanent wooden huts, constructed sturdy stone shelters, and established organized towns. Liberated from the constant struggle of basic survival, individuals could finally specialize in unique crafts: pottery making, textile weaving, architectural design, metalwork, and astronomical observation. Nowhere in the Western Hemisphere was this explosion of human ingenuity and urban growth more breathtaking than in Mesoamerica, a vibrant, tropical geographic region stretching from central Mexico down to the borders of Panama. The mother culture of the Mesoamerican jungle, flourishing along the hot, humid Gulf Coast of Mexico from roughly 1200 BCE to 400 BCE, a powerful society emerged that historians now recognize as the mother culture of Mesoamerica. The Olmec. Surrounded by dense jungles and wild rivers, the Olmec built remarkable stone cities, intricate aqueducts to transport fresh water, and massive earthen pyramids, including the famed ceremonial center of La Venta. They were master farmers, cultivating thick fields of maize, squash, beans, and tomatoes, while relying on domesticated dogs and coastal fish for protein. But what truly makes the Olmec iconic were their breathtaking artistic and architectural creations. Out of massive volcanic boulders, Olmec stonemasons sculpted giant, imposing human heads ranging from 4 to 11 feet tall and weighing up to 50 tons. These colossal stone faces featuring wide flat noses, subtle expressions, and carved stone helmets were dragged for miles without draft animals or wheeled carts, standing as eternal monuments to their mysterious rulers. Beyond their heavy masonry, the Olmec laid the foundational beliefs for almost every Mesoamerican civilization that followed. They developed early mathematical principles, mapped out complex trade routes across Central America to barter dark obsidian glass and green jade, and devised an intricate calendar to predict celestial eclipses. They even worshipped a feathered serpent god, a powerful deity that would later dominate the religious mythologies of both the Maya and the Aztecs. The giant metropolis in the valley. When the Olmec culture faded around 400 BCE, as the jungles slowly reclaimed their stone monuments, the seeds of their cultural influence took root further inland. By 500 CE, in the fertile central highlands of Mexico, a massive, multi-ethnic urban center exploded in power. The mysterious city of Teotihuacan. Located just 30 miles northeast of present-day Mexico City, Teotihuacan became a sprawling metropolis of over 100,000 residents, making it one of the largest cities in the entire world at the time. Supported by large-scale agricultural operations in surrounding valleys, the citizens of Teotihuacan created a highly organized grid of over 2,200 apartment compounds for multiple families, along with dozens of grand temples. Dominating the city's skyline were two colossal stone structures: the Pyramid of the Sun, rising 200 feet into the air, and the Pyramid of the Moon, standing 150 feet tall. Connected by a wide central avenue known as the Avenue of the Dead, Teotihuacan served as the commercial capital of Mesoamerica, exporting delicate turquoise jewelry, sharp obsidian blades, and painted ceramics to settlements hundreds of miles away. Mathematical geniuses and lost books of the Maya. Further south, tucked deep into the tropical rainforests of Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, another extraordinary civilization reached its golden age: the Maya. Flourishing from roughly 2000 BCE to 900 CE, the Maya constructed towering stone city-states like Tikal, Copan, and Chichen Itza. The Maya were remarkable scholars, engineers, and mathematicians. Expanding upon early Olmec ideas, they devised a sophisticated written language made of intricate pictorial symbols, or glyphs, the only fully developed written language system in the pre-Columbian Americas. Using advanced zero-based mathematics, Mayan priest astronomers accurately tracked the movement of the stars, moon, and planets, developing a complex 365-day solar calendar so precise that it predicted agricultural cycles and solar eclipses down to the minute. At Chichen Itza, they built El Castillo, a towering pyramid constructed with precisely 91 steps on each of its 4 sides. When added together with the top platform, the stairs total 365, a physical temple representing every single day of the solar year. To record their vast knowledge, history, and genealogies, Mayan scribes wrote on long strips of bark paper coated with lime, folding them into accordion-style books called Codices. Tragically, in 1562, a Spanish bishop named Diego de Landa, fearing that newly converted indigenous populations were secretly practicing their ancestral religion, gathered every Mayan codex he could find and burned them in a massive bonfire. Thousands of years of written indigenous history turned to ash in a single afternoon. Today, only 4 authentic Mayan codices survive in the world. The Great Environmental Collapse. Yet long before Spanish clergy ever set foot in Mesoamerica, a devastating catastrophe struck the Maya. By 900 CE, after centuries of grand building projects and cultural dominance, the mighty Mayan city-states suddenly began to crumble. One by one, great urban centers like Tikal and Copan were abandoned, as millions of people fled into the surrounding forests. For centuries, the disappearance of the lowland Maya was considered one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. But modern environmental science reveals a harsh reality. A brutal, severe drought lasting nearly 2 centuries hit the region. Combined with over-farming that exhausted the fragile jungle soil and deforestation caused by cooking mortar for grand stone temples, The land could no longer produce enough corn to feed the overflowing urban populations. Famine spread, trade routes collapsed, and the great Maya civilization dissolved into small, scattered villages long before foreign ships arrived on their shores. The island superpower of Lake Texcoco, centuries after the decline of the Maya, a fierce, warlike nomadic people known as the Mexica, later referred to as the Aztecs, migrated south into the Valley of Mexico. According to their ancient legends, their gods promised them a home where they saw an eagle perched on a cactus, devouring a snake. In 1325, they spotted that exact divine sign on a muddy, uninhabited island floating in the middle of Lake Texcoco. There, they laid the first stones of Tenochtitlán, a city that would grow into one of the most powerful imperial capitals in human history. By the early 1500s, Tenochtitlán was home to over 200,000 residents, making it significantly larger, cleaner, and better planned than almost any city in Europe, including Paris, London, or Madrid. Because space on the island was limited, Aztec engineers constructed massive causeways, wide-raised stone roads, connecting the central island to the mainland. To feed their vast urban population, they invented an ingenious agricultural method, chinampas or floating gardens. Workers wove large reed barges, staked them to the shallow lake bed, and packed them with nutrient-rich mud pulled from the bottom of the lake. Continuously irrigated by the surrounding water, these floating gardens produced multiple bountiful harvests of corn, squash, and tomatoes every single year. Unlike the trash-filled, disease-plagued streets of 16th century Europe, Tenochtitlán featured public trash collection, clean street sweepers, daily bathing rituals, fresh spring water supplied by elevated aqueducts, and luxurious private residences equipped with steam baths. But this pristine city was built on a foundation of absolute military dominance and religious fear. Blood for the sun god. The Aztec Empire was fueled by relentless military expansion, conquering dozens of surrounding tribes and forcing them to send regular tributes of gold, jade, turquoise, textiles, cacao, and slave labor to Tenochtitlan. At the heart of Aztec life was a deeply religious worldview that linked human existence directly to the cosmos. They believed that their chief gods, including Huitzilopochtli, the god of war, and the sun, were engaged in a continuous struggle against dark cosmic forces. To ensure the sun rose every morning, to keep crops growing, and to stave off total cosmic destruction, the gods required the ultimate nourishment, human blood. Aztec warrior nobles and priests performed daily ritual sacrifices atop high stone pyramids. In front of thousands of chanting spectators, priests used razor-sharp obsidian knives to slit open the chests of captured enemy soldiers, extracting their still-beating hearts to offer up to the heavens. To the Aztecs, this was not mindless cruelty, but an essential, sacred duty required to keep the universe alive. Premonitions of a world's end. In the early decades of the 1500s, strange omens began to haunt the Aztec capital. Ancient codices record that a blazing fiery object appeared in the night sky. A spontaneous fire engulfed a sacred temple that could not be doused with water, and the waters of Lake Texcoco suddenly boiled and flooded the city streets. At night, citizens claimed to hear a mysterious woman weeping uncontrollably through the alleys, crying, "Oh my children, we are about to go forever." Moctezuma, the Aztec emperor, was deeply unsettled by these terrifying signs. When an old man arrived from the coast to report seeing white, bearded men arriving in great wooden houses floating on the sea, Moctezuma feared that the gods or a world-ending catastrophe had finally come to collect their due. The Empire of the Andes. While the Aztecs dominated the valleys of Mexico, another colossal empire was reaching its absolute peak thousands of miles to the south, high in the cloud-draped peaks of South America. The Inca. Beginning in the 1400s, the Inca created the largest unified empire in the Western Hemisphere, stretching over 2,500 miles along the Pacific coast and straddling the rugged Andes Mountains from modern-day Colombia down through Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and Chile. Living in breathtaking, high-altitude cities built 14,000 feet above sea level, the Inca adapted to one of the most unforgiving mountain environments on Earth. To farm steep vertical cliffs, Incan engineers carved massive stone terraces directly into the mountainsides, creating step-like agricultural plots that trapped heat, prevented erosion, and produced corn, beans, quinoa, and dozens of indigenous potato varieties. A third of all harvested crops went to the local farmers, a third went to the Incan emperor and religious leaders, and a third was stored in massive public warehouses as a welfare system to protect citizens during droughts or natural disasters. The knot riders and mountain runners, perhaps most astonishingly, the Inca built and maintained this vast mountain superpower without using two tools that almost every other major civilization relied upon: the axle-mounted wheel and a written alphabet. Because steep, vertical mountain steps made wheeled carts completely impractical, the Inca moved exclusively on foot, using sturdy llamas as pack animals. To connect their sprawling 2,500-mile empire, they built a magnificent network of stone roads rivaling the famous highways of the ancient Roman Empire. Workers laid smooth stone paths that clung to cliff sides, carved tunnels through solid rock, and constructed suspension bridges made of woven mountain grass spanning icy river gorges hundreds of feet below. To transmit news across this massive network, the Inca established a continuous relay system of elite, highly trained runners known as chasqui. Stationed at regular intervals along the highway, a chasqui would sprint full speed to the next station, handing off urgent messages to the next runner. Through this human relay system, news could travel over 150 miles in a single day. But how did they send precise messages or keep track of grain storage without a written alphabet? They used the quipu, an ingenious system of colored cotton strings and intricate knots. By reading the specific color, length, placement, and structure of each knot, trained Incan accountants could track census data, tax obligations, army supplies, and military orders with complete mathematical accuracy. The silent stone city in the clouds. At the peak of Incan society, human labor was organized through a system called the mita, where every peasant citizen contributed a set number of days each month to public construction projects. Through the sheer force of thousands of human hands, the Inca built architectural masterpieces that still stun modern engineers today. In 1450 CE, high up on a mountain ridge 8,000 feet above sea level, Incan stonemasons constructed the sacred ceremonial city of Machu Picchu. Without mortar, draft animals, or iron tools, workmen shaped massive granite boulders weighing up to 50 tons, fitting them together so precisely that even today, centuries later, you cannot slide a thin knife blade between the stones. When earthquake tremors shake the Andes, these mortarless stones vibrate and lock back into place, preserving the city while modern buildings collapse around them. The forgotten nations of the north, far to the north of the Mesoamerican pyramids and Incan mountain highways, across the vast lands that now make up the United States and Canada, native societies developed in wildly diverse ways. Unlike the massive central empires of the South, North American native cultures were generally more dispersed, organizing into distinct regional tribes adapted to their specific natural environments. In the dry, sun-baked Southwest, Pueblo communities like the Mogollon, Hohokam, and Anasazi mastered life in the desert. The Hohokam, thriving in modern-day Arizona from 600 CE onward, dug hundreds of miles of deep irrigation canals to divert river water straight to their fields of corn, beans, and squash. Nearby, the Anasazi built breathtaking multi-story stone and mud apartment complexes carved directly into steep cliff faces, such as those preserved at Mesa Verde and Canyon de Chelly. Accessible only by wooden ladders or ropes that could be pulled up at night to keep out enemies, these cliff dwellings housed thousands of people. Connecting these southwestern towns was Chaco Canyon, a bustling administrative and trade hub linked to surrounding villages by 180 miles of wide, straight desert roads. But just like the Maya in the south, severe, prolonged droughts in the 1200s forced the southwestern Pueblo peoples to abandon their grand cliff cities and scatter into smaller, tribal villages. The pyramids of the Mississippi. Further east, in the fertile river valleys of North America, indigenous peoples left behind a completely different architectural legacy. From 100 BCE to 400 CE, The Hopewell culture flourished in the Ohio River Valley, living in small agricultural villages and establishing vast trade networks that stretched across the entire continent. Using river waterways, the Hopewell bartered with distant tribes, trading for copper from Canada, shiny obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, and seashells from the Gulf of Mexico to craft exquisite carvings and jewelry. Rather than building stone pyramids, the Hopewell constructed giant earthen mounds and complex geometric earthworks, using them as sacred burial sites and astronomical markers. By 1100 CE, near modern-day St. Louis, Missouri, a colossal Mississippian city arose that represented the peak of ancient urban planning in North America, Cahokia. Spanning 5 square miles, Cahokia was home to more than 10,000 residents within its city walls, with tens of thousands more living on surrounding family farms, making it far more populated than medieval London at the same point in history. Cahokia featured over 120 massive earthen pyramids and mounds, each dominating a specific neighborhood. The largest of these, Monk's Mound, stood 10 stories high and covered 15 full acres, at its base larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Servicing as a central hub for politics, religion, and river trade along the Mississippi, Cahokia was a bustling metropolis until environmental strain, overhunting, and resource exhaustion forced its decline around 1300 CE. The matriarchs of the eastern woodlands. Across the dense eastern woodlands, stretching from the Mississippi River to the Atlantic Ocean, lived tribes such as the Iroquois, Cherokee, Lenape, and Muskogee. These communities balanced seasonal farming with hunting deer and fishing local waterways. Unlike the deeply patriarchal social structures of feudal Europe, many eastern woodland nations were matriarchal. Women held immense political power, owning the clan's agricultural fields, controlling economic distribution, passing down family lineages, and choosing or deposing male tribal chiefs. Men hunted, fished, provided defense, and represented the tribe in external diplomacy, but they operated under the direct counsel and guidance of the clan mothers. The collision of two universes. Perhaps the most fundamental difference between native North American societies and the incoming European explorers lay in their core understanding of the natural world. While tribes claimed specific traditional hunting grounds based on geographic landmarks, indigenous peoples did not practice or even comprehend the concept of private, individual land ownership. Land, water, air, and wildlife were viewed as shared, sacred gifts of creation to be used respectfully and communally for survival.